Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Seiko SUR311P1. This watch is available from amazon.co.uk for £189, which is €227. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this white cardboard box with a hinged lid. The interior is fully upholstered with black velour fabric to a good standard, and the base is also fully upholstered with black velour fabric. It has a cutout, and in the base the watch sits on a padded pillow cushion which is also black velour fabric upholstered to a good standard. So it is okay, it's acceptable presentation, but it's a clear cost cutting measure by Seiko to use a cardboard watch box rather than a plastic watch box which is vinyl coated. So I think they could do better, although it is aesthetically pleasing and it is acceptable at this low tier price point of €227. So with regards to the items that come with the watch, it comes with this European guarantee and instructions booklet. Inside the first page, it has a QR code you can scan with your Android or iPhone and download the owner's instruction manual, which details the operation of the movement use, which is the Seiko 6N52 quartz. On the last page of the booklet, there is the warranty card itself. So this is a certificate of guarantee, and on the reverse it has space to fill in the watch serial number, case number, date of purchase and the authorised dealer can stamp it. But as this piece was purchased from amazon.co.uk, it's covered by the Amazon return policy and also their own guarantee in addition to the Seiko 12-month international guarantee. Therefore they don't stamp and fill in the warranty card itself. You also get this fold-out leaflet, which is how to adjust the New Link removal system bracelet. So this is the first Seiko piece I've seen with the New Link removal system bracelet, which we're going to look at. Clear, concise diagrams. The instructions are translated into multiple foreign languages, including English. Very easy to follow if you're unfamiliar with the New Link removal system bracelet. You also get this cardboard tag with Seiko, and on the reverse, it has the reference number of the piece, SUR311P1. It also details that it's water resistant to 10 bar, which is 100 meters, and it uses a sapphire crystal, as well as the movement, which is the Seiko caliber 6N52 quartz, and the barcode for the piece. And you also get this card tag, as you can see, and it details that it uses the New Link removal system bracelet. So I'll show you the link that I've removed. Now, as you can see, just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. This uses solid links rather than folded links, and each one of the links, which are brushed satin finished, they have an arrow for the direction that you push out the link, and this is also the direction of the arrow that you push the link, the pin back into the link after you've resized it. So on the other side you can see the center portion has two mirror polished sections to it, two ribs which are mirror polished, and the flanks are mirror polished. So there are holes drilled in it, and these are an interference fit for the stainless steel pin, which I'll show you. Now, often with push pin bracelets in the low tier, Chinese brands, for example, will use split pins because they're inexpensive and the split pin provides an interference fit in the holes. But the problem is the long-term durability, because often the split pins compress and then of course they become sloppy, they become slack. But this uses solid pins, as you can see, and they're machined to an interference fit in the holes, so they're tighter, they're a more friction fit, and they've chamfered the ends so they're easily guided inside the holes. You don't have a problem fitting them, and the quality control and the tolerances of these stainless steel pins are better than the split pins used by lots of low tier Chinese brands, for example. So good quality control and builds quality and finishing to the solid 316L grade stainless steel pin. Now the thing is, this is a new system because traditionally Seiko used the pin and collar system, so the push pin would go into two collars and that would provide an interference fit. The two collars would grip the pin and prevent it working its way out of the bracelet link. But this doesn't use pin and collars, it actually uses a sleeve, and the sleeve is a stainless steel spring. It's flexible, as you can see, it's very soft. But it does provide an interference fit. It's a friction fit around the stainless steel pin, which is solid, as I've detailed. It's not a split pin. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. But this is made from stainless steel, so it's not going to rust, which is good. It's not nickel plated, mild steel. And it's a nice snug fit on the pin. Now the other thing to note is they've made the length of the spring the perfect length to fit in between the lugs of the link, as you can see. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus on it. So the length of the spring perfectly fits in between the internals, so it's not going to work its way out of the holes. The spring is just the right length to go in between, so you push the pin through with the direction of the arrow, and then the spring grips it, and then the spring prevents it from sliding out of the internals of the lugs of the link, so it actually works very well. Now they've also included this stainless steel tool, which works very well. The length of it is the correct length to push out the pin, and I'll just insert it into a pin to show you so you can see how far it goes. So you push it in the direction of the arrow, as you can see. Now it doesn't go all the way through, it goes over halfway, and that means that the pin will project enough on the right hand flank, enough for you to get a grip of it with purchase with your index finger and thumb to withdraw it fully. So as you can see, it goes just over the halfway mark, and that's enough to push it out to get a grip on it. Now when you insert it, when you resize the bracelet, you push the pin back in with your finger, and it will go so far, it will go halfway, and then if you look at the end of this stainless steel tool, you can see it's engraved with A in capital, and then it has a pip on the end of this stainless steel tool. Now they've machined this pip to be the perfect depth to push the pin into the left hand flank, as you can see. And what that does is that sets the pin inside the left hand flank at the correct depth. So often it's the case with resizing bracelet push pins, it's difficult to get the position left or right. The pin will either be too proud or it will be too deep inside the link, and it won't be the same as the others. But for example, if you look at this one, on the left hand flank you can see all the pins are recessed slightly, and this pip on the end does that job. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. When you push it in, that pip just has the perfect depth to set the pin so it's slightly recessed, so the end of it isn't proud on the flank, and it's not too deep either. And then when you look at the bracelet, on the left hand flank you can see all the pins are recessed to the same depth using the pip, and on the right hand flank you can see all the pins are recessed the same. They're not too shallow, and they're also not too deep. They look exactly the same, and this is very good. It actually works very well. I pushed out the pin when I resized the bracelet using the tool, and it did have minimal friction. It came out very smoothly. I didn't have to really force it out, and it was better than using the conventional bracelet resizing tool. When I pushed it in, I just used my fingertip, and it goes so far. When you push it in with your finger, it will go halfway, and then you finish it off using the A pip, as you can see on the end. So you just push that on the end of the pin, and it continues all the way in until it can't go any further because the pip on the end sets it to the correct depth. So I actually prefer this system. I think this is better. It works very well. I tested it out myself, pushed out the pin easily, pulled it out with my finger and thumb, pushed it back in with my fingertip, and then I finished it off with the A pip to get it to the correct depth. And it works very well. It's a good system, and Seiko deserve credit for it. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm head of the piece diameter, we have a 46.5mm lug to lug measurement, a thickness of 8.6mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push clasp. 2-button push clasp is signed to a good standard with high definition engraving of the Seiko text logo. 2-button push triggers are mirror polished, nice light resistance to the spring loaded action, and deploys freely. Snap shut with a nice positive click. So we have a flat sapphire crystal. Now the negative is there is no AR coating on the underside of the flat sapphire crystal, and when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle you can see that this is one of the main negatives of the piece, the lack of AR coating. It is highly reflective. This has a black sunburst dial which is very shiny, but it's so deep black it actually looks like a black enamel dial with a glossy finish, but it's very reflective. The silver mirror polished applied indices and the silver mirror polished dolphin handset are also very shiny, as is the silver framing around the date window. So it's a very reflective and shiny piece, and therefore this would really benefit from AR coating on the underside of the flat sapphire crystal, but because it doesn't have it, you can see it's like a mirror. So that reduces the legibility, reduces the clarity in direct light or sunlight, for example. It can be difficult to read the time and also read the date complication due to the highly reflective nature of it. So it's a shame that Seiko didn't use AR coating. Sapphire crystal is a notable upgrade to using Hardlex, which is hardened mineral crystal, so it is more scratch resistant and harder than Hardlex, which is good. I am pleased to see Sapphire crystal used at this price point rather than Hardlex, but just a shame that they didn't use AR coating. It's very shiny. So 100 meters of water resistance, and the thing to note is this is 110 grams. Now the 110 grams is with all the links in the bracelet. I have removed one link to size it for my 8-inch wrist, but the maximum weight of it is 110 grams. 100 meters is strong specification. We have a solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, which is coin edge finished. It has a chamfer machine to it, so no sharp edge to the tips of the lugs, and a mirror polished domed cap. Now, another cost cutting measure because it's sterile, it's unsigned. I prefer to see an engraved S or an embossed S for Seiko. It would be better if they signed the crown rather than having it sterile. It's disappointing to see a cost cutting measure at €227 because it is inexpensive for Seiko to emboss or engrave an S on the crown. It would further enhance the piece. The bezel is solid 316L grade stainless steel, flat profile rather than domed profile, mirror polished to a flawless standard, nice and low profile. The flat sapphire crystal projects slightly above the flat stainless steel bezel. It's got a beveled edge to it which catches the light. It's very low profile and flat, and I like it. I think that it's very good because it reduces the thickness of this piece down to only 8.6 millimeters. It's very low profile. The head of the piece is solid 316L grade stainless steel, brushed satin finish to the top of the curved lugs, and that complements the longitudinal brushed satin finishing to the flanks. Nice fine grained finish to the brushed satin finishing, beautiful luster to it. There's also a large mirror polished bevel which runs the full length of the top edge of the case, and the mirror polished bevel marks the transition between the tops of the lugs and the flanks, which are brushed satin finished. In between the lugs it's mirror polished, and they deserve full credit here because often low-tier brands, as a production cost-cutting measure, they do not finish or mirror polish in between the lugs to the same standard as the flanks or alternatively the bezel, for example, because it is more expensive to do. It adds production time and also production cost. But this one is mirror polished in between the lugs to the same high standard as the flawless mirror polishing to the bezel and also the bevels on the edge of the case. Mirror polishing in between the lugs is very good. It's high quality and it also looks very aesthetically pleasing. Now, the thing I like about this is the low profile case. The flanks do not have tall slab sides. They are very slender and low profile. Nice curved undercut to the flanks, and it's been deburred and chamfered very well. So no sharp edge to the undercut of the case. The tips of the lugs are also deburred and chamfered very well on the four corners, so it doesn't have sharp corners. Female pitted end links on the bracelet are a good snug fit to the head of the piece, and they articulate freely. They don't feel stiff or kink. However, one of the main negatives to this piece is the end links and also the bracelet. There's a lot of play. Lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play. Play in every single direction. And the negative of this is it rattles. Now the positive is it articulates freely. It doesn't feel stiff or kink, and of course because it's a female pivoted end link, the end link in the bracelet can articulate beneath the tips of the lugs, so therefore it does give a nice fit, but very sloppy. It clicks and it rattles when it's on wrist. You can really notice the amount of play. This is wholly unacceptable. One can be magnanimous with a low tier piece below €100. One has to be realistic and expect some cost-cutting measures, build quality, quality control issues at the below 100 price point in the low tier. This is a low tier piece, but we're looking at €227 price point. It's unacceptable to have that level of poor build quality, quality control and tolerances. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink due to the excess play, which is a positive, but the negative is it clicks. It rattles side to side, up and down, longitudinal, lateral, every single direction. This is simply due to poor tolerances. Seiko have drilled the holes too large in the end links and the centre link of the bracelet link, and also the pins are undersized. They could correct this very easily by using a larger pin and drilling the holes smaller to create an interference friction fit, and that would reduce the slack, the play. So disappointing. Now, unfortunately, that's not the only problem. So this uses the new link removal system. So with the springs and the solid pins, you would expect this to tighten up the tolerances, but it doesn't. It's just like split pins with pins and collars, because as you can see, lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. Now, of course, needless to say, because it's a sloppy bracelet, it articulates freely, no stiff links. Doesn't pull arm hairs, which is good. Doesn't have sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. So it doesn't feel sharp, and it doesn't pull arm hairs. That's the positive. It does have a beautiful luster to the brush satin finishing, which is longitudinal and nice fine-grained brush satin finishing. The mirror polishing to the ribs on the centre links are very good, as you can see. Very well finished. The flanks are mirror polished to a flawless standard. So the quality of the mirror polishing, the deburring and chamfering, and also the brush satin finishing is good, but the build quality itself is poor. Every single one of the links rattles. It's a sloppy bracelet. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, we have the same problem. Every single one of the new link removal system bracelet links has too much play. Now you would think with the spring inside the links, that would take up the slack, that would reduce the rattle and reduce the play, but it doesn't. The pins are actually a tight interference fit in the outer holes in the link, so they're not going to work their way loose. That's the positive. I'm confident in the reliability of it, the long-term durability. But the problem is the tolerances, because although the pin is a snug fit in the spring in the centre, it doesn't take up the slack. This could be really enhanced if they use screw pins rather than using push pins with these spring sleeves. So rattles, articulates freely, doesn't have sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks, beautiful luster to it, beautiful mirror polishing to the flanks. So visually it looks very aesthetically pleasing, but it rattles. So poor quality. So let's look at the clasp in detail. Beautiful luster, brush satin finish to the body, the engraving is good, doesn't feel sharp. It's been deburred and chamfered very well, doesn't have full sharp corners. The edges on the top edge and the lower edge are deburred, they don't feel sharp. Mirror polished flanks is done to a good standard. Now, there's only 2 micro adjustment holes, not even half a link of adjustment. This is disappointing. Now, in the absence of half links either side of the clasp, it is difficult to get the correct fit, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full link doesn't give the correct fit. The bracelet feels slightly too tight or slightly too loose. And really, this would benefit from a longer clasp with 4 or 5 micro adjustment holes, because we've only got 2, which is the absolute minimum. And you can see how close the holes are spaced. That's not even half a link of adjustment, it's a quarter link of adjustment. So it's negligible micro adjustment. This needs a longer clasp with 4 or 5 micro adjustments, or alternatively, a half link either side of the bracelet. 1 half link on the 6 side, and 1 half link on the 12 o'clock side. And that would also mean you can centralise the clasp, because the other negative of not having half links and only 2 micro adjustment holes is when you resize the bracelets, it will make the clasp too far to the 6 o'clock or the 12 o'clock side. Off centre, it will never sit centrally if you don't remove 1 link either side. But by having half links, you can adjust the clasp to the centre of the bracelet, get the correct fit, and also centralise it so it looks better and feels better on wrist. So this really needs enhancement. Now, that's not the only negative. Pressed metal clasp. This is wholly unacceptable. €227. We're now in 2025. This is not the early 2000s. Pressed metal clasps were acceptable in the early 2000s, but in 2025, solid milled 316L grade stainless steel clasps have become the industry standard, even on low tier pieces costing below €100. This is €225. The cost of Seiko updating to solid milled stainless steel clasps is negligible. So, as you can see, it is mirror polished to a flawless standard, and it is solid 316L grade stainless steel, which is pressed. It's not nickel plated mild steel, which is good. Quality is good in terms of finishing. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge of the flanks. The centre doesn't have sharp corners to it, which is good. It does snap shut with a nice positive click, which is good, and the 2 spring-loaded triggers do deploy with nice light resistance, so it does work okay. Let's check the hinge pins. Dreadful. This is an absolute disgrace to Seiko. Look at the amount of play. Lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play. Play in every single direction, and it's significant play. Just bear with me, I'll put my glove behind it to get it to focus. And you can see the amount of play in every single direction. Now, one could be magnanimous about this with a low tier piece below €100. As I've detailed, one has to be realistic and expect some cost-cutting measures. This is €227. Dreadful. And this is simply down to poor quality tolerances. The holes are too large, the pins are undersized, as you can see, and then you get this rattle. It clicks. It rattles side to side, up and down, laterally and longitudinally, every single direction, and it's significant play. Now, my concern with this is the long-term durability. How long is it going to be before the excessive shear load causes this spring bar to fail? Let's check the centre pin. Again, dreadful. Now, needless to say, it articulates freely because it's sloppy, but lateral, side to side, up and down, longitudinal play in every single direction. Again, my concern is, how long is it going to be before the pin works its way loose because of the excess shear load? It either breaks or comes out because the hole is too large, the pin is undersized. Look at the amount of play in that. Dreadful. And it clicks and makes a rattling sound. Finally, let's check the right hand pin. Dreadful. Play in every single direction. Look how much play there is. It wobbles. Absolutely dreadful. This is a disgrace to Seiko. Lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play. Now, the cumulative effect of the three hinge pins having excessive play, left hand, centre and right, is overall the press clasp is sloppy. It rattles. And it's very poor build quality, quality control and tolerances. Inexpensive for Seiko to correct. They could update this to a solid mill clasp and tighten up the tolerances of the three hinge pins easily, but they don't do it because they want to maximise profit margin per piece. These pressed stainless steel clasps are inexpensive to make with poor quality control, build quality and tolerances, therefore that maximises the profit margin. They can retail this at €227 and make massive profits per piece. So poor quality clasp, poor quality bracelet execution. Let's look at the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, 100 metres of hermetic seal is strong specification for a daily wear piece. They could have made it 50 metres, 100 is good. Concentric CNC lathe tool machining to it, and it's engraved in the centre with the Seiko logo to a good standard, and also the specification of the piece, including that it is 100 metre water resistant and made in Japan. Milled slots are very well finished, no sharp edges, no burrs, and the circumference of the stainless steel case back is mirror polished to a flawless standard. The thing I most like about it is how flat and low profile it is, and this is the benefit of this being a quartz powered piece by the Seiko 6N52 quartz. It's a very thin movement, and of course, as you can see, it's very flat and low profile. This does not need a bubble back case back. It's one of the thinnest, flattest case backs I have ever seen on a watch. Perfectly flat. The benefit is this sits very snug to the wrist, feels very smooth and comfortable against the wrist, so it's comfortable to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. And it also reduces the thickness of this piece down to only 8.6 millimeters. It is incredibly low profile. So 100 meters, but it's very slender. And of course, the flat sapphire crystal makes the piece very low profile too. Now, the end links in the bracelet are another clear cost-cutting measure. They are hollow, folded end links rather than solid end links. These are wholly unacceptable. In 2025, the industry standard has now become solid end links. Again, hollow, folded end links were acceptable in the early 2000s, but in 2025, even on low-tier pieces below €100, the industry standard is solid end links. So, cost-cutting measure from Seiko and a cost-cutting measure too far. As I've detailed, the negative of using hollow folded end links is the poor tolerances, because the spring bar is loose inside, as you can see, and where it goes through the centre of the end link in the bracelet, in the hollow folded end link, you can see the amount of play. So the end link itself is a snug fit to the head of the piece, but the problem is the tolerances. The holes in it are too large for the spring bars, and therefore there's a lot of play. So cost-cutting measure, disappointing. Now, on a positive note, the quality of the finishing to the underside of the head of the piece is excellent. No sharp edge to the undercuts to the flanks, which is good. The four tips of the lugs are deburred and chamfered very well, so no sharp corners to the tips of the lugs. Mirror polishing to the underside to the head of the piece is exceptional. It is high quality finishing. Just a shame about the hollow end links in the bracelet. So let's test the crown. It's a push-pull crown rather than screw-down crown, so the benefit of that is you don't need to unscrew it in order to set the time or the date complication. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the framed date window at 3 o'clock, you can see it clicks over the nice positive day of the month. I like the indexing, it feels light, so to put it into perspective, it feels lighter than the solid heavy indexing of a Seiko NH358 automatic, and one does have to get accustomed to it because it does click over very easily. So it's easy to go too far when you set the dates because it has such light resistance. You need to be delicate, you need to slowly rotate the crown because each click clicks over very quickly because of the light resistance. It doesn't have the heavy indexing of the NH358, which has more resistance in the crown. You can really turn the crown with force and it clicks over with a heavy click. But this feels lighter, so it does take some getting accustomed to, but once you do become accustomed to it, it's actually very pleasant because it feels very robust. So both the single and Arabic numerals align correctly. They're not too far to the left or the right of the framed date window, and they're not too far high or low. And I like the singles and the doubles. The proportion is good. The font is nice and crisp and sharp. It doesn't look too thick or blurry. The legibility is good. One benefit of this being quartz powered is the rehaut is very shallow, as you can see. So that means the hands are very close to the underside of the sapphire crystal. The dial is also very close, and also the date window is very close. Often with framed date windows, they create a shadow around the date complication, and the problem is it's dark and therefore it's difficult to read the single and double Arabic numerals. This doesn't have a shadow, even though it does have a thick silver date window. That's because the date wheel is very close to the dial, and also the dial is very close to the underside of the sapphire crystal. So this doesn't have a lot of depth as per an NH358 powered piece, which has a thick rehaut. So, quick set date complication works well, alignment is good, legibility is good. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. If you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead and stopped ticking. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with a Seiko caliber 6N52 quartz. Very light resistance because it has 0 joules, low friction to the gearing, feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise all the way through the 360 degrees, so it feels very good. Now in terms of backplay, there is some slight backplay you have to get used to taking up. So you have to take up the slack. When I rotate the crown, for example, when I rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise now, you can see the minute hand doesn't immediately respond. There is slack. You need to get used to taking up the slack. It does have backplay. But once you become accustomed to taking up the backplay, you can align it perfectly when setting the time. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to tick around the dial once again. So, 100 meters is strong specification. It's a push-pull crown, which is perfectly acceptable for a daily wear piece. It doesn't need a screw-down crown. We're not looking at a dive piece. They could have made it 50 meters. 100 is excessive. It's strong specification. So, I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, as I've detailed, I have sized the bracelet. I've removed one full link. And I can just easily slide an index finger beneath bracelet and clasp, which is the correct sizing method. The reason why you should be able to always slide an index finger beneath a bracelet and clasp at all times, because it allows for wrist expansion in warmer weather or when one is active. So one index finger is the correct sizing method, and it also reduces the shear load on the push pins, or alternatively screw pins in a bracelet, because often collectors have a tendency to size bracelets too tight, and that puts excessive shear load on the push pins or the screw pins, and therefore that expedites the wear, and therefore you get elongated holes in the bracelet links, and also the pins wear down rapidly, expedites the wear, and then you get a sloppy bracelet with lots of play. But if you allow an index finger of wrist expansion, that reduces the shear load on the push pins or the screw pins, and therefore it reduces the wear on the bracelet pins and also the links themselves. Also feels more comfortable because it allows your wrist to expand in warmer weather or when you're active. So I've removed one full link. Now with all the links, as I've detailed, this is 110 grams. So anything below 150 grams is the sweet spot for 40mm head of the piece on a bracelet. At 110 grams with all the links, needless to say, this is very comfortable. It feels weightless on wrist. It feels like a very lightweight piece. The heft is low because hollow folded end links reduce the heft. Pressed metal clasp, which is short, also reduces the heft. If this had a solid mill clasp or a micro adjustment clasp, that would add heft to the bracelet, and also solid end links would add heft. It would be circa 135 to 140 grams on a 40mm head of the piece. So it's only 110, very comfortable to wear, feels very snug to the wrist. The thing I most like about it is look how snug this is to the wrist. No gap whatsoever beneath the tips of the lugs or the undercuts of the flanks of the case. It curves around the wrist very well. Above all else, the thing I like about this piece is the thickness. This is one of the lowest profile daily wear pieces I have reviewed on my channel, and I have reviewed over 400 watches. So 8.6mm is incredibly thin. The benefit of the flat sapphire crystal and the benefit of the flat stainless steel case back is not having a bubble back case back, not having a boxed top hat or double dome sapphire crystal reduces this down below 10mm. 8.6 is one of the thinnest pieces I have reviewed. Incredibly comfortable as a result. Feel good factor is 10 out of 10. Comfort level is 10 out of 10. 110 grams, it feels perfectly balanced on the bracelet. Now, the negative is the taper. 20 to 18 does not look as good as the industry standard, which is 20 to 16. As I've detailed in my previous reviews, 20 to 16 is perfection personified. This has slightly too much meat at the clasp end. 20mm is the correct lug width for a 40mm head of the piece, that is industry standard. But 20 to 18 looks very straight and parallel. And the problem is, when you get down to the clasp end, because it's a very small clasp, it does look like a lot of meat on the bracelet. 18 really does look too wide for a 40mm head of the piece. This would look more aesthetically pleasing if it were 20 to 16, but also it would reduce the heft even further because it's 110 grams with a 20 to 18. If they used a 20 to 16, they could reduce it down to 100 or 105 grams with all the links in the bracelet. That would further enhance the comfort level and the feel-good factor. So head of the piece looks correctly proportioned. The lug to lug is a fraction short at 46.5. 48mm is the sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist or a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. So at 46.5, it's a relatively compact lug to lug measurement. It's 1.5mm below the perfect sweet spot of 48, but even on my large 8 inch wrist, due to the curved undercut and curved profile to the head of the piece, it does wrap around the wrist very well. So this will fit you if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, and it will also fit you if you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively. 40 by 46.5 is very well proportioned. Nice slender taper to the lugs, and I like the large mirror polished bevels which mark the transition on the top edge because they catch the light like the mirror polished bezel, which is flat profile. Very aesthetically pleasing. Legibility is good despite the lack of AR coating. When you look at the piece straight on, to reduce the reflective nature of it. The dolphin hands are easy to read. The silver mirror polished applied indices have a 3D effect. They are easy to read. And as I've detailed, because this has a shallow rehort, it means the dial sits very close to the underside of the sapphire crystal, so there isn't a shadow around the date complication inside the framed date window. So legibility is surprisingly good despite the lack of AR coating. The problem is when you tilt it at an oblique angle, you get the reflective nature of it. You see it's like a mirror. But when you look at it straight on, due to the deep black glossy dial, which actually looks similar to a Musso black dial, it's very dark. So it's sunburst finish, but most of the time it actually looks like a black glossy enamel dial, which is very aesthetically pleasing. But the contrast between the mirror polished indices, the dolphin hands and the black dial is very good, despite the lack of AR. So feel good factor is 10 out of 10, comfort level 10 out of 10, 110 grams lax heft, just disappointing taper, 20 to 18, it's too thick, but it is acceptable. On a positive note, the bracelet does have a beautiful luster and it does look very aesthetically pleasing, very comfortable to wear. No sharp edges to it, doesn't pull arm hairs, articulates very well, and of course the female pivoted end link, as you can see, does work better. If they used the male end link, that would extend the lug to lug measurement and it would create a gap beneath the end link in the bracelet, but as you can see, end links work very well. It's just a shame they're not solid end links, but one has to be realistic at this price point. There are going to be some cost cutting measures. So good looking piece, comfort level is very good. So I like it. Visually it looks very good, comfort level is good, feel good factor is good. But of course we do have a sloppy bracelet with hollow end links, and of course press clasp is a disappointment. So these are the shortcomings you need to be aware of, as well as the lack of AR coating. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. So this uses Seiko Lume Bright, which glows in a green tone, which is similar to C3 Superluminova. In terms of performance, there's no discernible difference between Seiko Lume Bright and BGW9 or C3 Superluminova. In terms of the exciter, how brightly it glows inside the Superluminova, Lume Bright is very similar in quality to BGW9 in terms of performance, the longevity of it, how long it glows, how long the exciter emits. So, no discernible difference. I think Lume Bright is just as good as BGW9 Superluminova. They've used dots of lume around the applied indices, which is good. Now, bear in mind, the Dolphin hands do not allow for a large area, a large plot, as per, for example, Baton hands or alternatively Mercedes hands. They are more slender, and this is a daily wear piece, not a dive piece, but Seiko deserve credit because they have fully lumed the Dolphin hands, although they aren't the optimum shape and size to apply for 5 to 6 layers. But as you can see, this is clearly 5 to 6 layers of Lume Bright applied on the dots, on the indices, and also on the Dolphin handset. So one can easily differentiate between the larger, longer minute hand, Dolphin hand, and also the shorter, wider hour Dolphin hand, so you can read the time in the dark. In terms of daylights, the lume on the dial, the indices, and also the Dolphin hands, it matches. It's the same white tone. It doesn't look more cream on the hands or the indices. It's the same white tone in daylight conditions, so that's good. In the dark, you can see there's a perfect colour tone match. The lume on the hands and the lume on the indices looks exactly the same tone. It doesn't look darker or lighter. And it is very aesthetically pleasing. It's a light green tone which almost looks blue, and the legibility is good. Now bear in mind, this is a daily wear piece, not a dive piece, but you can read the time in the dark, which is the intended purpose. So I think they've done a good job of it. I'm pleased to see there isn't the cost-cutting measure of 3 to 4 layers of Lume Bright. This is clearly 5 to 6. You can see it's not fading whatsoever, and this is the optimum performance one gets with 5 to 6 layers. So Lume Bright is stellar performance, equal in quality to BGW9 or C3 Superluminova. Right, so let's discuss the movement used, because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this is powered by the Seiko 6N52 quartz, which is made in Japan. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse Japanese-made movement. It has Euro joules, and it has hacking, which is a useful complication. Has a quick set day complication, which, as I've demonstrated, works very well. 3-year battery life is very good. Often quartz movements only have a 2-year battery life, so 3 years is very good. You could buy this watch and wear it for 3 years before needing to change the battery. The stated accuracy of the 6N52 quartz is plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Very accurate. So just think about that for a moment. That's not plus or minus 15 seconds per day or per week, plus or minus 15 seconds per month. Better than plus or minus 1 second per day accuracy. Incredible accuracy with a 3-year battery life. One feature I really like about it is it has a low battery indicator. So what that means is when the battery is running low on power reserve, instead of ticking 1 tick every second as it's doing now, it then ticks 2 ticks every second. And when you see the second hand is ticking every 2 ticks, you know that the battery is getting low and then you need to change it. So it gives you adequate warning that the battery is going to expire rather than just stopping dead as per other quartz movements. So 2 ticks per second warns you, and that's the low battery indicator. No negatives to it whatsoever. It's reliable, well proven, build quality, quality control, materials are all good. The 6N52 is a reliable, well proven workhorse quartz movement made in Japan. And the correct choice at this price point, because the battery life of 3 years is good. The accuracy is very good. It's plus or minus 15 seconds per month, so outstanding. Quick set complication works well. Hacking works well. So I like it. I think it's a good quality quartz Japanese-made movement. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, the price point is £189 British, which is €227. Difficult piece to weigh up because what we're looking at here is an excellent quality head of the piece on a poor quality bracelet. So therefore hard to evaluate it overall because excellent head of the piece, poor quality bracelet and clasp. So I'd like to separate it into two. If I were just evaluating the head of the piece, I would say excellent quality and excellent value at €227. But if I was evaluating the bracelet and clasp, I would say poor quality and poor value at €227. It's wholly unacceptable to have this amount of play in end links, rattle in the bracelet, play in the 3 hinge pins, low quality press clasp, play in the hinge pins at €227. So there are some positives and some negatives. Sapphire crystal is a positive, Lume bright is a positive, and the quartz movement being plus or minus 15 seconds per month is a positive. 100 meters is strong specification. Sapphire crystal versus hardlex, strong specification. Difficult to weigh up. Excellent head of the piece, poor quality bracelet. Overall, I'm going to have to downgrade it and I'm going to declare it OK quality and I'm going to declare it OK value at €227. I can't say it's good quality and I can't say it's excellent quality because of the bracelet and clasp. I can't say it's good value and excellent value because at €227 it's expensive for poor quality end links, bracelet, hinge pins, poor quality clasp, hollow folded end links. Too many cost cutting measures on the bracelet, poor quality. So I'm going to recommend it to you for your consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings. It is worth buying this piece if you're going to wear it on rubber or leather straps, for example. The head of the piece is excellent, and on a leather strap, yes, it is an excellent daily wear piece, but the bracelet really is poor quality and very disappointing. So I'm going to recommend it to you for your consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings. It's OK quality and OK value at €227. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Seiko SUR311P1. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.